Hey guys, we're starting another section. In the next lessons, we'll learn the basics about internationalization of WordPress themes, a process that is also sometimes called localization. And the first question that comes to mind, of course, is what the hell is internationalization or localization? And I answer that it's nothing more than the process of getting your theme ready to be translated into another language that is internationalized, localized. And here we can make an observation. Generally, in small projects, which will be used only for a single client who doesn't want his or her page to be viewed in several languages, I don't usually worry about this subject. But this theme is essentially important if you, as a theme developer, have plans to distribute your work, that is, to allow people from all over the world to download it. For example, if you decide to sell your theme. It's also important if you have a client who needs his or her site translated into other languages. Your task as a theme creator is to at least make the theme translatable. I'm not saying that you will translate the theme into any and all languages. That's not the case. After all, you're not a translator. It's not your job to translate anything, okay? But you have to make it ready for others to translate. That's what I'm going to teach you in the next lessons. Let's learn how to make the theme translatable and generate the files that will serve as a basis for future translators of your theme in an easy way. This part of the course is very interesting, and believe me, you will not find this subject being discussed in other places, at least not in the way I explain it. I say that because I searched a lot and couldn't find anything. But before we start, let's explain a little bit about how is the translation workflow in a WordPress theme. First step, for a translation to be possible, first we have to use some specific functions. Those functions have to be used every time you write some text in the theme that can be translated. For example, let's go over to the page generated by the 404.php file. Here we have the English term, page not found. In a Brazilian site, for example, this should be displayed as página não encontrada. In a Greek site, it should display as Iselida Vevrefike, and not page not found. But for now, it's impossible for us to translate this because if we look at the code, you'll see it's hard-coded there. For example, let's open the 404.php file here. As you can see here, the way it is now, it's impossible for us to add the translation to this term. The same will happen to the other theme files, for example, the customizer.php file. There are several strings here that, as they stand, they cannot be translated. They will stay that way, untouched, and in the language in which they were written, in English in this case. To solve this, we'll need to use a series of PHP functions, which are known as getText functions. A side note is that WordPress uses its own version of these getText functions. It doesn't use the original PHP versions. There are many of these functions, but in these lessons I'm going to focus a little more on two of the most used ones in WordPress themes, alright? I will need to skip some times to explain a little bit about other functions that we'll find in files that we've been copying from native themes and from other files, but the goal here is to concentrate more on two of these functions. In the next lessons, you'll have more details about them. Fine, the first step within the internationalization flow for a theme is the following. We need to use the getText functions in our files, okay? Just a side note once again, there's a difference between translating the theme and translating the site's content, okay? Everything I'm going to show you here refers only to the theme and not to the site's content. Maybe right now you're not able to tell the difference between one thing and another, but they are totally different things. For example, let's go here to the theme homepage. Almost all the text you are seeing here are not generated by the theme, but are information that is coming from the database. If I'm not mistaken, the only texts here that belong to the theme are the text that is inside the search box, and these other two here related to the user account. The rest is either a post or a page or a WooCommerce product, or content coming from the customizer, that is, database information. Translating these text strings is not the responsibility of the theme creator. With time, you end up understanding the difference. Let's continue here. Second step of the theme translation flow. After each translatable term of the theme is properly wrapped with a getText function, we can create a file that will have the POT extension. POT stands for Portable Object Template. As you can see by the name, it's a kind of template file. This file will contain a list of all translatable strings, but will not have any translations inside it yet. That is, it will only serve as a template for translations. Don't worry if you don't understand so far. In the next few lessons, it will make more sense, okay? Usually, this file, this template, is sent to the translators. And from it, the translator generates a file with the PO extension. And having this file in hand, he or she, the translator, or you, the developer, can generate another file with the MO extension. These two files are the ones that eventually contain all the translations. The difference between them is that the PO file contains text that can be easily read by us, human beings. On the other hand, the MO only has machine code. It's full of characters that don't have any logic for us. And it can only be read by web servers, that is, computers. This is the file that WordPress really needs to translate your site, incredible as it may seem. My initial thought was to end my explanation at the creation of the POT file, and the reason is very simple. It's because you, the theme developer, is not forced to create the actual translation of your theme, as I said earlier in this lesson. Whose task is this? Well, if you live in a country where the official language is not English, just remember the last time you had to buy a theme on the internet. Who translated the theme for you? Probably, if you bought the theme in English, it wasn't translated. You yourself had to find a way to translate it, right? And if you're building the theme for a client, the translation is always up to the client. Let's suppose you live in Russia and your client, also Russian, wants the theme to be in English too. You're not a translator, are you? So generally what you do is teach the clients how to translate, or they end up hiring a translator for that. Or in a third scenario, you can transfer this task to your theme collaborators. Let's suppose that your theme was a huge success and someone from China wants it in his or her language. Then he or she can decide to be your collaborator and translate your theme into Chinese. That's why you need to have a template file to offer to him or to her, which has to be in the POT format. This collaborator will eventually send a PO file back to you at least, and using that file, you can generate an MO file. Getting back to the point, so my initial thought was to end my explanation at the creation of the POT file, but I'm going a little further. We'll go through the whole process, and I'll end up teaching you about this task that is usually up to the client, as I said, which is translating the theme. Well, as I said, and I will repeat it over again, this translation task is not yours, but it's your obligation to at least make the theme translatable, right? Well, in the next lesson, we'll start with the first step explained today. We'll understand what are the two getText functions I mentioned in today's lesson, and you'll find the strings of the theme that can be transformed into translatable terms. So, until then.